In this guide, we'll go over everything you need to know as a miner or botanist. While fishing is also considered a disciple of the land or gathering class, it works very differently from miner and botanist, and so will be covered in a separate guide. Now then, just like with combat jobs, you can also unlock and use all gatherers and crafters at once. Aside from some class-specific armor like maybe a mining helmet, all three gatherers share armor and accessories, the only difference being their primary and secondary tools. For this reason, you may find it helpful to level up all three gatherers simultaneously so you don't have to lug around as much equipment. Speaking of equipment, what are the stats a gatherer uses? First, you may have noticed that when you equip a gathering class, your MP bar is replaced by a gathering points or GP bar. This is the resource you spend to use your gathering abilities. Every 3 seconds while not actively gathering, you recover 5 GP. And every time you perform a gathering attempt, another 5 is recovered. This does mean that if you gather repeatedly and quickly, you will recover GP faster by gathering than just waiting around. The items called Cordials can be used to recover a large amount of GP on a cooldown, so if you really need an intense amount of GP for your current project, make sure to bring these. These items exist in watered Cordials, regular Cordials, both crafted, although Cordials can be bought for company seals among other things, and high Cordials, bought for Scrips. High quality crafted Cordials have a shorter cooldown and recover slightly more GP. Scrips are awarded for handing in collectible items in certain contexts. They are functionally the gatherer and crafter equivalent to tomestones. Because all of your abilities are pretty costly, you should not expect to use an ability for every gathering attempt, let alone every gathering node. It may be helpful to use something if your GP bar is full, but otherwise I would recommend only using abilities in bursts to make the most of them. Next, the gathering stat is what determines your ability to gather something. The more you have of this, the higher chance you have of successfully gathering the item, maxing out at 100% of course. Once you unlock collectables, this stat will also determine how strong your gathering attempt spending abilities affecting item collectability are. We will get back to that later. Finally, perception determines your chance to trigger the Gatherer's Boon mechanic. This can be considered like a critical hit type effect, as all it does is grant you an extra item from your gathering attempt, assuming it succeeds of course. Once you unlock collectables, this stat will also determine how strong your scrutiny ability is. Essentially, in this scenario you would like to optimize your gathering gear at max level. The typical aim is to first make sure you have enough gathering, the stat, to guarantee gathering of the items you care about. Then make sure you have enough GP to be capable of performing the combo of actions you wish. For an example, if you like gathering collectables, at least 700 seems to be a good choice. Then finally, you can top up with however much perception you can fit. Another important aspect is how normal gathering nodes work. I will cover timed nodes among other things later. Gathering nodes have sort of designated fixed locations they will spawn. Normally, a gathering node depletes after 4 gathering attempts, and once a gathering node has been depleted, it will respawn when you have depleted 2 other gathering nodes. Meaning, you can circle around 3 spawn points endlessly if you wish. Sometimes, a gathering node can have a special condition. This is a good thing, as it will give you some extra benefit if you satisfy some requirement. These benefits can be extra gathering attempts, a boost to the chance of triggering Gatherer's Boon, or even that every gathering attempt grants extra items. Gathering nodes can also have rare or hidden items, where the rare items only will be accessible for 1 gathering attempt and will disappear regardless of whether you succeed or fail. The second are not always present on a gathering node, but can be revealed with the luck of the Mountaineer or Pioneer abilities. Keep in mind that both botanists and miners have access to 2 varieties of nodes, and you will need your secondary tool unlocked at level 11 to gather the second variant. Next, let's go over the abilities available to miners and botanists. I will use the botanist ability names for this guide. the Miner has an identical copy of every single ability the Botanist has, just with a slightly different name and icon. Let's start with the exploration related abilities. First, Triangulate makes gathering nodes visible on your minimap. At level 2, it is upgraded to be auto-casted when you switch to Botanist. Shortly after, you learn Arbor Call 1 and 2. The first helps you locate the closest gathering node to you, and the second instead highlights the highest level node within a large area. Next, Sneak, learned at level 8 and made automatic at level 27, makes all enemies up to 4 levels above you ignore you so you can safely gather. And finally, Truth of the Forest, learned at level 46 and automatic at level 60, makes timed nodes highlight. Timed nodes, also known as unspoiled and folklore nodes, are gathering nodes that appear once at specific times of the day in the game. This does still mean several times a day, but each timed node tends to be available for only 2 Eorzean hours at a time. As the Eorzean time takes around 1 minute every 2.9 seconds or so, 2 hours is approximately 5 minutes and 50 seconds. These timed nodes usually contain more valuable materials to be gathered, or could even contain a quest item that you might need. From Heavensward and onward, you may need to purchase certain tomes of regional folklore to gain access to timed nodes. These are typically purchased with Scrips. Next, let's look at your activated gathering abilities. Now, you will learn multiple ranks of the same actions, and these do not override each other. This is because sometimes you won't need the more potent and more expensive version of the ability. Let's start with the abilities that are active for the full node when cast. Field Mastery increases your gathering chance for the entirety of the node, although it will not work at all if your initial gathering chance was 0%. In most cases, you can expect to sometimes use Field Mastery 1 or 2 to just cap off your guaranteed gather, and rarely will rank 3 ever be necessary. Pioneer's Gift instead boosts your Gatherer's Boon chance, and Nofika's Tidings is a very high level ability that boosts the amount of items you get from Gatherer's Boon by 1, which tends to be useful if your Gatherer's Boon chance is high without Pioneer's Gift. This is because Blessed Harvest flat out increases the amount of items you get per gathering attempt with no chance involved. Due to the rather small cost increase from rank 1 to 2, you will probably use the second rank far more than the first. Finally, if a gathering node offers elemental shards, crystals or clusters, then the 12's bounty increases the amount of these that you collect per gathering attempt. As you level up, several traits will boost this ability, unlocking crystals and clusters as targets and even increasing the amount of yield boost it grants. You also get access to The Giving Land, which is a random version of the same ability, which seems to boost the amount by anywhere between 0 and 30. Long story short, if you have access to The Giving Land, this is always better. Keep in mind it has a cooldown, unlike all other abilities in your arsenal. Moving on to single attempt buffs. First, Flora Mastery does the exact same thing as Field Mastery 2, except only for a single gathering attempt. It also costs half the GP. However, honestly, I can't imagine many situations where you would want to use this, as if you really need the gathering chance, it is probably more cost effective to use Field Mastery 3 for the full node instead. But if your chance is below 50% without help, then perhaps there is a reason to also add Flora Mastery. Your other single attempt buff is Bountiful Harvest. The first rank acts like a single attempt version of Blessed Harvest 1, but after you complete your level 68 gathering quest, do your job and class quests, it permanently upgrades to Bountiful Harvest 2, which has the same effect, but with a scaling potential of up to 3 items, scaling with your gathering stat. This can be particularly useful on timed nodes if you want a big payout, use Blessed Harvest 2, and then you can add Bountiful Harvest to gain even more. There are a few other abilities with very specific uses, the first one being Luck of the Pioneer, which uncovers hidden items on a node. Usually, the hidden items on a node are indicated very clearly, and using Luck of the Pioneer unveils them completely. Keep in mind that this ability is unlocked by your job quest line too. Ageless Words is the other special ability which heals the gathering node you are currently working on by 1 gathering attempt's worth. It is very important to keep in mind that it heals and does not grant a gathering attempt. The significant difference is that Ageless Words will fail if the node is already at full health. Eventually, you will also learn Wise to the World, alongside adding a 50% chance to cause Ageless Words to give Eureka Moment, which is necessary to use Wise to the World. Ultimately, it means Ageless Words has a 50% chance to heal 2 attempts instead of just 1. Before moving on, there are a few traits worth highlighting. The 3 enhanced GP regeneration traits do the following. The first one increases your GP recovery while not gathering by 1, to a total of 6. Rank 2 increases this to 7, while also increasing the recovery per gather to 6. Rank 3 increases the recovery when not gathering to 8. Now, you may have noticed that you have an additional menu in your actions and traits, allowing you to pick actions you have learned from the other gatherers. The funny thing is that you can pick 10 things and there are only 8. This limit is a little relic from the past, but ultimately you can take any of the actions that you want. This can allow you to track both mining and botany nodes at the same time if you want to. You can even track spearfishing spots and such if you like. The main issue is that you will have to activate all these trackers manually, since you will not learn the passives alongside them. At level 50, you can do the questline starting with Inscrutable Tastes to unlock the Collectables feature. When you attempt to gather a collectible item, a new menu will appear. Collectible items are completely worthless if you don't know where to deliver them, so it is important to look into this before going on a big collection spree. When handing in collectibles, there will be a minimum collectability rating required for the item to be accepted at all, and then after that, there are specific thresholds that give you more rewards. Make sure to keep track of these thresholds when collecting. In a handful of cities, you will find collectible appraisers who tell you what items they want, this can change from time to time, and what collectability awards what. Usually, the minimum cutoff points is 400 or 600 collectability. To affect collectability, you are given 6 actions. Collect is your gather button, which produces an item with the exact collectability you have in the menu so far. Scour increases your rating by up to 200, depending on your gathering rating. The ability will state exactly how much it will yield. It also spends a gathering attempt to do this. Brazen Woodsman or Prospector is a risky alternative that can go anywhere between half value and 50% more value compared to Scour. Meticulous Woodsman or Prospector is a careful alternative that only increases by 75% of Scour's value, but also has a chance, scaling with your gathering rating, to not spend a gathering attempt at all. Generally, the Brazen option is never considered a good choice due to its randomness. To boost these 3 actions, you have a few GP spending abilities. First, Scrutiny boosts your next action to grant up to an additional 250 extra rating, scaling with your perception. Collector's Focus instead increases your chance to trigger Collector's Intuition, the collectible version of Gatherer's Boon, by 75%. Take note that this is not an additive 75%, so 25% does not become 100%, but only 44%. Whenever you use one of the gathering attempt spending options, the Collector's Intuition adds an extra 100 when triggered. Additionally, whenever you use a gathering attempt spending action, there is an unspecified chance to activate Collector's Standard. This effect makes the next use of either Brazen or Meticulous give a minimum of 100% of Scour's rating. This means Meticulous will be equivalent to Scour, while Brazen randomly gives between 100% and 150% of Scour's potential. Additionally, I should mention that even though it's not shown in the collectible window, both Ageless Words and Wise to the World are usable during collectible gathering. Field Mastery is also available and is important to consider if your gathering chance is not maxed out. Just to avoid confusion, take note that gathering attempts are referred to as integrity in collectibles, but otherwise are just the same. A special type of node exclusive to collectibles are the ephemeral nodes. These ephemeral nodes are not highlighted from far away, like the typed nodes are. In fact, ephemeral nodes will respawn just like normal nodes, but at the same time work in time periods similar to timed nodes. These types of collectibles are intended for the purpose of Aetherial Reduction, which allows you to turn such a collectible into Aether Sand, an important crafting material. A higher collectability rating will yield a greater chance of getting Aether Sand, as well as more Aether Sand. Of course, 1000 rating is significantly more valuable than anything below. However, due to the fact that you can keep collecting almost indefinitely in these scenarios, you may sometimes simply not have any GP left to work with. For that reason, it is worth noting that Aetherial Reduction can result in Aether Sand as long as the collectability rating is at least 400. To finish off on collectibles, here is a common rotation, you could say. It requires at least 700 GP to pull off and is performed with scrutiny, meticulous, and then forks depending on your situation. If you are between 850 and 999 rating, use meticulous. If you are below that, but not below 800, but do have collector's standard, still use meticulous. If you don't have collector's standard, use scour. If you already reached 1000, skip to the next step. Use collect, or optionally use ageless words and wise to the world. Make sure to do it before the last attempt is spent. If your stats are too low to reach 800 rating with the first two steps, then adding scrutiny to the third step can possibly help you reach 1000 anyway. Although it will require a cordial to also afford ageless words in that case. Alternatively, if the node has more gathering attempts than usual, then you can also extend with extra meticulous or scour as you see fit. Outside of this rotation, collectible gathering mainly involves shooting as high as you can with the resources you have. If your stats are low, it is recommended that you use scrutiny and scour and only use meticulous if you have collector's standard. This is because the probability of meticulous's effect is very low if your stats don't match up to the item you're collecting. For ephemeral collecting, if you don't have any GP to spend, use scour twice to safely reach the minimum 400. Meticulous if you get collector's standard, of course. To round off this guide, let's talk about some ways to level up your gatherers, as well as a tip for max level. Simply doing whatever your class quest tells you to do should get you plenty of XP at first, but in case it does not, or for when you finish it, here are some other options. Live quests can be repeatedly done for a decent amount of XP. Just mind that there is a daily allowance combined with a massive 100 maximum allowance limit, so the allowance can sneak up on you. Every day, your grand company will request some items delivered, and this gives an enormous amount of XP. Custom Deliveries is a feature where you hand in specific collectibles to some NPCs. They give a very decent amount of XP for handing in every week. For Shadowbringers and Endwalker, there are also story questlines that give a large portion of XP, although this is a one-time thing. You can also collect timed node collectibles to hand into Rowena's Splinters for XP and Scrips. There are multiple timed node timers you can find, just choose one you like. Finally, you can also just collect literally any node, preferably within your level range to get the most value. Or you can travel to the Diadem from the Firmament in Ishgard and gather items there instead. This is a commonly recommended method, although I did not use it myself to level, so I cannot speak for how powerful it is compared to the other options. Once you reach max level, if you want to optimize your gathering, make sure to get your equipment fully melded. I have a separate guide on Materia if you want to know more about how that works. The important part is that melded gear will produce more materia faster, and the more materia you melt into the gear, the stronger this effect is. So, a piece of crafted gear can contain up to 5 materia, although it can be expensive. This is called pentamelding. There is a strategy in which you put on the starter gatherer gear for max level and fully pentameld it. The weaker equipment will spirit bond more quickly and more easily because the nodes you may collect are considered more challenging for the gear. How effective this is may vary, as it also negatively affects your ability to gather and collect. That is all for this video. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you found it helpful, and if you did, You could like the video or subscribe to get notified when next I post a video. If you have any questions or anything to add, like some of your own gathering tips, please do leave a comment down below. Fun fact, before Endwalker, perception had a completely different effect. It instead affected your chance to gather high quality materials. I know, absurd, right? Of course, there used to be high quality gathered materials, but these have all been removed, and if you still have some, you will be forced to downgrade them to use them for anything.